I had to hightail it here from Confidential. I was backstage after the show, and I looked. I was like, "Oh shoot, it's showtime!" So I had to catch Sean. Sean was probably back there doing jumping jacks and push-ups, waiting on me and everything. So yeah, I just want to welcome everybody to our newest show, Sports Business Insider. The funny part is the show isn't, it's like I'm just kind of here, but we got the subject matter expert right here, Mr. Sean Russi. I said that right, didn't I?
Yeah, you're good.
All right, yeah, Sean Russi, who was an agent in the pros, and this show is basically taking a look at the sweet science of the business aspect of the sport. So, without further ado, first of all, how you doing tonight, Sean?
No, everything's going good. The Confidential was good again tonight. How you guys doing?
Yeah, everything's pretty good. Just keeping up with Cubs ball and everything, and got a whole lot of great material for Sideline Sports to come. Also, everybody, as a reminder, the Sideline Sports Show is now on Believe Network. You have seen it on some of our social medias, so please go to the Believe Network, find us, type in Sideline Sports, and follow us and subscribe. So, for today's topic, we are going to touch on team relocations and its potential impact. So, as of late, we've been seeing some craziness in the news as far as locations. Some you already know about, and then some you kind of don't know what somebody said, and it's being entertained actually by the media. And well, I guess who wouldn't. But I want to start off with the recent news actually came out about last week. Speaking of relocations, so upon the voter rejection out there in Kansas City for a new stadium for the Royals and the Chiefs, Dallas Mayor Eric Johnson calls for the Chiefs, alluding to the Dallas Texans days of the AFL, to return to the city of Dallas. Uh, wow, you talk about some bold statements. I guess that's the only way he figures, unless Jerry Jones goes away, that's the only way Dallas is going to win a Super Bowl or what's going on. I've heard it all on social media as of late regarding this. But wanted to get your thoughts about this. If you could touch on this topic, because this is an odd one.
Yeah, no, especially given Kansas City's success, you figured it would have been an easy vote through, but this is not untypical with stadiums taking one vote, two votes, maybe even three, four votes to finally get done. Um, but obviously, when something falls through like that, and again, when you see a major team that's got obviously all their success, it kind of makes other cities wonder, well, can we jump in there real quick? And the
Right.
type of money a team like the Chiefs would bring to a city is obviously exponential. Um, and I think, I don't know if it's posturing by the Dallas mayor just based on what the Cowboys have done this offseason and kind of taken the hands off approach, and they've got to lower the budget and no extension for Dak. And, whether he's just trying to make the Cowboys a more competitive, Super Bowl contender year in, year out versus just a playoff contender, which is, I think, is where they're stuck right now, is they're just a constant playoff contender. But in terms of the stadiums, I think it's an opening, could be an opportunity. You might as well throw it out there and see what happens. But I think the one thing is, there's going to be another vote next year. There'll be another vote the year after that if it fails. They'll keep trying. They have the lease till 2032 or 2031, excuse me. The earliest they could move is 2032. So it'd still be several years away.
Yeah.
But this is not untypical for the first vote to be turned down. Living here in Orlando, I remember it took, I think, 7 votes for the Magic to get their new arena.
Oh wow.
Um, so it's not untypical, but with a franchise like the Chiefs that's got multiple Super Bowl titles over the last 5-6 years, it's usually something that's really quick to be done. We saw the Bills are getting their new facilities here. I think next year.
Yeah,
Um,
Tennessee.
and they
Tennessee's getting
have
theirs.
and neither of those teams have had the success outside of making the playoffs that the Chiefs have had over the last decade.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that what may be the fine print, why how much money is the city actually having to put up versus what the owner was putting up for the stadium, and that's usually the biggest sticking points, right? Is how much is the money owner is ownership going to put up for the stadium versus the city, or maybe a financial firm's going to come in and put some money into the stadium. That's usually where they end up going back and forth, almost like the CBAs when they go into their lockouts in professional sports. The sticking point is always usually how are we going to split the money up.
Yeah, yeah, very true. And then even if it did come down to all right, so it's not happening, right? So what about the idea of, all right, we're going to move the team from its current location, and maybe we'll keep them in the metropolitan area. So if anyone's ever been to the Kansas City metropolitan area, there's actually it's almost like the city Kansas City is like on the border of Kansas and Missouri. And if you're from the Kansas side, you're from KCK. If you're from the Missouri side, you're from KC Mo. Do you think it would be entirely possible for them to just move across the city to the Kansas side, and all people literally would have to do, instead of watching a team move states away, all they would have to do is just drive across the city? I mean, look at the Warriors. The Oakland couldn't keep the Warriors. They just moved across the bridge to San Francisco, well, back to San Francisco,
Yep.
and they still kept their fan base because at least the people in Oakland could just drive across the bridge.
No, and the 49ers new stadium, is not, no longer in San Francisco. They moved down closer to San Jose.
Yep.
Um, it's again, if you can find a site in a city willing to pass the bill, it's almost, how can we at least keep you in state? And if that's what they have to do, I wouldn't see them going to that right now, but maybe the second or third, or excuse me, the third or fourth attempt, that they would, maybe go to somewhere, another, jurisdiction, and be like, hey, what do you guys think? You've got this land. It seems like we could build something here, and see what kind of agreement they could come with, with that city, and see if that city would pass a vote.
Yep.
Um,
Oh,
but it's not
absolutely.
untypical, for them. And then people get into the whole, well, maybe they should not be named Kansas. Maybe it should be named something else. I don't get into the whole name. If you're moving 10 miles down the road, you still stay the Kansas City Chiefs, the San Francisco 49ers, the Golden State Warriors. None of them went through. They weren't
Yeah.
the Oakland Warriors at any point.
Yeah, but they were the San Francisco Warriors. That's funny,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, they just kept them in the same area, and that's really good because that's not like this next team that we're about to talk about, and that is that after 56 years, the Oakland Athletics will depart the city, and they're going to play a couple of years in Sacramento until a new stadium is built in Las Vegas. Man, this is just bad for the city of Oakland. You figure in a span of about 7 years, they lost all three of their sports teams. You know, but you look at it, the Raiders, they were in an old stadium, and
Hmm.
now that fan base is having to watch them. Like they left California altogether. They weren't going to go be
Yeah.
the San Jose Raiders or
Yeah.
the, or the or anything like that. Like no, they went to Las Vegas. You know what I mean? And yeah, and then we talked about the Warriors as well. But with the A's, a lot of people would say actually it's a long time coming. That's another old stadium. That's another depreciating, team. You had a chance of sell the team like all last season, and it's crazy. Like you never thought you
Hmm.
would see A's fans and Giants fans actually team up for once. They're supposed to be the biggest rivals, right? So
Yeah.
let's just give your thoughts on the Oakland Athletics relocation. I know you got a lot to unpack. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, this one is interesting, especially when you consider teams like the Rays, are going to get a new stadium, and they keep their payroll kind of similar to Oakland. But Oakland, obviously, ever since they sold to John Fisher in 2016, they've had the lowest payroll three times.
Right.
Last year, they were 40% lower than the second lowest payroll,
Hmm.
which was the Pirates. And when you're doing that, obviously, it's not about winning for ownership. He's obviously been posturing possibly to do this move since he's taken over,
Right.
um, or at least to move them out of Oakland. Who knows if the final destination for him actually has been Vegas this entire time? But I think from the day he's bought it, he's obviously made a kind of a statement quietly that we're not going to spend money on the team. So,
Right.
that means fans aren't going to show up, and then he has a reason to go to MLB and say, "Hey, our attendance is declining. We need to move."
Yeah.
Um, and that's essentially what happened. The attendance has declined year after year, and um, no blame to the fans there. The product has not been good. They've had to sell every player that's come close to being, any type of all star over the last 7, 8 years since he's taken ownership.
Yeah.
And the MLB owners unanimously approved it based on his reasoning of, oh, well, the attendance is declining, the stadium's in bad shape, I can't get a new stadium in Oakland. And then, that this is where the interesting things start coming. Then MLB decided to waive his relocation fee, but John Fisher is a billionaire.
Yeah.
So why are we
Hardware
doing
and
that
fees.
in
Hmm.
in the effort, especially when we're doing this new CBA and collective bargaining tax that we touched on last week. Why are we treating the A's differently than someone else? How badly do they want a franchise out there?
It, it,
Um,
it actually wasn't that long ago that the A's actually had a pretty good team. 2019 and 2020, they had good squads. 2020 may have been a COVID year, but they actually won the AL West. You know, and
yep,
then he proceeded to trade away the talent that they had, just give them away. So
yep.
there's
Simeon,
actually,
Scooter, all of them. They traded off, and the four big guys he had that year that they had essentially drafted and groomed, he gave them all up.
yeah, so there's been a lot of rumblings that he sabotaged his own team solely so he could move to Vegas. So I actually am on board of the theory that Vegas had always been his destination ever since he took on the team.
Yeah, like I said, I think he's had that in his pocket since he took over. I don't think maybe when he gets to Vegas, he'll spend some more on the salary cap side. But I think this move that he's done has definitely been purposeful and with intent for them to get out of Oakland. Um,
Mhm.
the interesting things that we dug up while we were looking into this is he's got the approval in Las Vegas for a 9-acre piece of land, and to put buildings on the land. There's no real plan in place for the stadium right now.
Yeah.
He's got construction, but not an architect. There's a lot of things that he doesn't have in place that should be in place by now if you're gonna be out there by 2028.
Yeah.
And then now they're moving to Sacramento for a couple years, and that was another point of contention because there was actually negotiations to stay in Oakland, but part of the sticking point was he had to give a year of that 3 years for the MLB to entertain new ownership for an expansion later on in Oakland, and he didn't want to give on that point for whatever reason. My
Right.
guess is they would have probably found out that the team probably would have been wildly popular given how sports does in the Bay Area had he just put some effort into the salary cap side of things and kept those stars in 2019 and 2020.
Yeah.
Um, and he quickly came to a deal with Sacramento within 24 hours of receiving the Oakland offer. So that that you figure he just doesn't want them looking too far into what he's done there. So he struck that up. They won't be even named the Sacramento Athletics. He's going to strip the city off the name. Um, but the interesting with the no stadium, there's now a belief quietly that if there's no stadium by 2026, 2027, at least plans, they could end up staying in
And in
Sacramento.
Sacramento, yeah.
And it's interesting to see, maybe he sells the team in this 3-year period if they end up falling through in Vegas, but there's a lot of things that are not in place that should be in place for a team that's supposedly relocating to a new city already.
Yeah, almost like it's kind of hasty, you know what I mean? Even
Yeah,
though if and we just said it, maybe it was his intent to move to Vegas all along, but you would think you would be kind of, planting a little bit more seeds in place because now you finally got it. Now you finally got your approval. Now the MLB is saying, yes, you can go to Vegas now. You got your wish, you got what you wanted. So how do you not have those things like an architect in place and other things? Like it's like what were you doing? Did you think that the deal like wouldn't go through? You facilitated it. You traded away your players. You sabotaged your team. In my humble opinion, you would
and
think
then the
that you would have
interesting
a
part,
yeah.
he had the same exact plan for Oakland in terms of building this 9 billion expansion and this acres of land. It was the same plan he had proposed to do in Oakland, and all of a sudden he got cold feet on his own plan. That then all of a sudden is the same plan he's going to try to put into Vegas.
Yeah. So the magic question that people would from the business aspect, because sports business insider, right? Why do franchises relocate? Why do they threaten to move?
And usually it is as easy. You can see a declining franchise or the stadium is in bad shape. And Oakland had both those things, but only one of those things was naturally caused. The stadium declining was obviously taxpayers and votes and things that had to pass. The team declining was done purposely by ownership. I think when you compare the Oakland situation to say the Tampa Bay Rays, who had been wildly successful over the last 10 years, and they still couldn't get the attendance despite the success, it's because of the stadium has been pretty much bad since day one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the idea was Tampa, maybe baseball wasn't going to stick in Tampa, so they were okay with that facility being open as a stadium for a while. And then obviously the Rays became one of the consistent AL East and playoff contenders over the last decade.
They made two
But in
World
29,
Series since
yep,
their
and then in
existence.
2019 they had to go to MLB, kind of like Fisher did, and said, look, we still can't get the attendance. We've been to the World Series, we win 100 games every year, people still don't show up. And it's due to the location of the stadium and how bad, again, the shape of the stadium. And they put a plan. Well, we'll go play in Montreal for half of our home game, since you guys want to expand back out there anyways.
Yeah, you
That
know
was
what?
shot down by MLB, but that was their posturing to go to Tampa, saying, hey, we're serious about leaving if you're not going to start supporting us in some way.
Hmm.
um
Is it possible Canada could, that Montreal could find baseball there again? They left there what 20 years ago. And now you got
yeah,
the Rays kind of, dancing around it. Now I did look something up. They said as of right now there are no plans to sell the team or anything, so that rules that out. But it doesn't stop the owner, of course, from picking up and relocating the team himself. Your thoughts on that?
yeah, so they just recently got their approval, so they're probably done in terms of relocating, unless something falls through. But the MLB has marked Nashville and Montreal as the next two cities for expansion, whether that's via a team relocating or whether they're going to add two new teams here in the next CBA. Which could be interesting in terms of what they then do with the playoffs. But those are the next two cities that would get MLB franchises. Whether whether it's a team relocating or a brand new expansion franchise, those are the two cities MLB is looking at right now, is Nashville and Montreal.
Wow.
And I think that's why the Rays went that way with the proposal, because they already knew MLB's been looking to bring baseball back to Canada, at least Montreal. They still have the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays I don't think will ever go anywhere. They won't leave Canada.
No, they won't leave.
Um,
And
but
and
the passion for
Olympic
the
Stadium is
sport
still
out
standing.
there,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, no, the passion for the sport out there is still there. They saw it in the one game they played in Montreal. It's a lot different than playing the game here, and I think they would be excited to get a team back out there.
Yeah, an Olympic Stadium is still standing too.
Yeah, no,
Yep.
that's the Rays were basically going to resurrect, essentially be expose Part B.
Yeah.
Um, and again, that was their posturing, and they got their new stadium. So now, the next teams to do that will have two cities that MLB will look at. But I definitely think in the next 10, 15 years, you'll see a team return there, whether it's a new team or whether it's a team that relocates there.
Yeah. I'm thinking probably more relocation. It'd be pretty. I mean, they could, in theory, add a team. It would uneven the divisions again, but I know it can be worked out. I think a relocation might happen before that, but I'm sure that Montreal is anxious to get a team back. They've been waiting on it and everything.
I mean, even look at teams like the Marlins, who, as much as they have new facilities, they really haven't been much of a contender since getting that stadium.
They haven't, but it's kind of hard to. I mean, they won two World Series in Miami. They got a win. They have a winning history.
Yeah,
It's they're gonna take that into consideration. Um, I don't see the Marlins. I just don't see the Marlins going anywhere. Neither. Um, they have four major professionals. Well, for the longest time, it was just the Dolphins. I remember a
yep,
point in
yeah,
time when it wasn't even when there was no Heat, there was no
yeah.
Marlins, there were no Florida Panthers. You know what I mean? It was
Hmm.
just the Dolphins. Like sports in Miami was the Dolphins and the Hurricanes. That's it. You know. And then, of course, over the last, 30, 40 years, um, they have all four teams again. And then also the Hurricanes. So yeah, and Miami has always just kind of been one of those spots. It's not like LA. You know how like they say like with LA, like they really don't give a damn about football about that unless it's the Trojans. You know what I mean? I mean the Rams won the Super Bowl and barely anybody blinked. Um,
Yeah, yeah. No, it's one of those cities that, they show up for the playoffs.
yeah, yeah, they'll show up for the playoffs and such, but that's about as far as it goes. But um, so our last thing we kind of want to touch on, we'll touch on a little bit here, is the financial impact of NIL and your quick opening thoughts about that.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, the most recent news is obviously regarding EA Sports, and they've come to terms to release the college football again. They're paying players, $600, $800 topped, and it's a low amount. It's not an amount you would expect based on what has changed the landscape with NIL.
And based on
Um,
how much that game is going to sell, because it's the first game in 10 years that we're getting, for college football.
Right, and especially coming off the heels of basically them getting shut down with the Ed O'Bannon case way back when, you would think they would just compensate the players correctly, and I think that's why you see players that are hesitant to opt in right now to that is because they're getting more on their likeness from brands that are smaller than EA than that offer they're getting from EA Sports. And same with the teams that have decided to opt out of it. I think they've just decided it's not worth it. It's not to punish the fans of of the video games or anything, but I think it's still a shot at the athlete saying you're still not worth much to us just because you're in college. But yet these athletes are getting much more from other guys. Whether it's Powerade or an energy drink or Nike or whoever's giving out these. There's a lot more than $600-$800 to use their name, and
Oh
I
yeah.
think that's where EA's catching a lot of blowback on it. But the NIL in terms of the athlete themselves, now we've always called college athletes essentially pro athletes the way they've treated them the last decade. So now they're getting paid. They're not getting paid necessarily like a pro athlete unless they're that top star. And some of those players are making millions of dollars in college right now.
Yeah.
So I think it makes it easier, not necessarily to not be successful at the next level, but to be able to walk away from college and have a couple $1 million in your pocket and go, all right, well, I didn't get picked up, but made a whole lot of marketing money and I can go on with my life. And, I still got to play college football for 4 years and I can now go do something else. Whereas, in the past, these guys were playing college football for 4 years, getting no money. And if there was nothing else to do, that was kind of it. And they
That was it.
struggled.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
Arch Manning, he's only thrown like two passes in college, and he's getting like 5 million. You know,
yeah,
but
no, and
also,
that's,
oh, I'm sorry.
the
Go ahead.
name power, especially depending what college you go to now, and that's why I think NIL has instantly impacted the transfer portal because of these sizes. Some of these schools, obviously, that have more money, more boosters, can do more on the NIL side. They'll have more sponsors. Under Armour would be more interested in working with this school versus this small school over here, and I think it makes it the transfer portal a lot more than just where am I going to go get playing time.
Right.
Especially, I know Miami Hurricanes came out early and announced the team NIL deal when when the floodgates opened. When you're looking at when you're a player looking at that, say you're a secondary, an average type player, you're probably not going to get out of college football. That's going to be your 4 years. But you looking at a university that you automatically get some money because they have a team NIL deal. I'm going to go there all day over a university that doesn't have that deal in place.
Of course. It's about making money. As quick as you can. No one would blame. Especially since you have some of these athletes and they come from areas where all they had was a football. It was either that or pick up a gun, that or sell drugs. You know what I mean? So they had not even seen $200 at once in their lives, and now you're gonna give me $2 million, and all you want to use is my name and my
Yeah,
likeness. Where do I sign? Plus, I'm good enough to go to the pros, so this is my starter kit. Like, I get to a quick 2 million right now. I could bank this. I could spend a little something. Like, I can. Like, I don't have to wait until my first big contract. I don't have to wait until I get drafted. I can take my mother out of the hood right now. You know.
yeah,
I can give back to my friends that helped me out all this time right now. And I'm gonna make that money back tenfold because I'm gonna get drafted. Yeah, if I'm a first rounder, I'm probably gonna see like a $30 million contract, maybe even 25. But you probably know, from your days of being an agent. But then in like 3 years after I've proven my worth, I'm gonna get that $100 million deal. So like I'm not worried. So it's totally understandable why complain. People can complain all they want about NIL. If they were a student, they take that deal. They take it.
yeah, 100%, 100%. And the athletes that played 20 years ago would tell you they would take it as well. And I think that's the one thing that kind of that protects the stars, right? Because we've seen the injuries happen at the end of the college career, and then all of a sudden that guy falls off and just can't make it in league. At least now they've made some money for their efforts on the field versus putting all that effort in, getting hurt, and you never get to play professional football and you never make a dollar.
Yeah,
So I mean that's the benefit I see for especially like I said the players who end up going down that path and unfortunately getting hurt. I mean, at least while you were a pro athlete, despite being labeled a college football player, you made some money doing it.
yeah. At least you did. Well, that does it for today's episode. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Everybody on Twitter. Shout out to the ones on JB, the program's Twitter, Sideline Sports Twitter, as well, and all those who tuned in. This deserves a part two. I think we should delve a little bit more into it next week. So yeah. So for Sean Russi, agent, this is Denzel Snipes, and this has been Sports Business Insider. We'll see you all next week.